So next step after we have either gathered or pleated or sewn up, if you're doing either the simple A-line with no gathers or pleats, or the straight cut with your darts in it, so you'd be sewing your darts and your side seams, or just your side seams for either of those ones. So once we've got our skirt piece sewn up, we're ready to just check that it fits onto our bodice properly, and then we're actually going to pin it to the good fabric of our bodice. So I'm just checking this on the mannequin, but you don't need to actually check this on the mannequin. So I'm just checking that my lines are actually going to finish at the edge, so my edges of my fabric are actually going to finish at the same place. If they don't, you can pull out some of your gathers to give it the skirt a little bit more, or you can pull in some more gathers. You also just want to check, if you have done the gathers, that your gathers are sitting nice and evenly all the way around, and getting rid of loose flyaway threads is always a good thing to do as you're going. So now what I'm going to do, I'll take the bodice off. What's going on? Is that pinned in? That's not. Just check I haven't gone off camera. I think I'm okay. Alright, so I've taken the bodice off. I'm going to now pin right sides together, and I also want to find the center. So actually no, I don't need to find the center because I'd already checked that it was lining up correctly. So I'm going to be putting right sides together. So if I put my bodice upside down, I feel like I'm going off camera, sorry guys. If I put my bodice upside down against this, then I can actually pin them together, sorry, not stitch them together yet, pin them together this way, making sure that I don't pull out any more of my gathers as I'm going. One technique, if you are, say, having to pause this for a while before you start sewing before you sew your skirt onto your bodice, you might like to actually just top stitch down all of those gathers that you've put in so they can't come out anymore if you've checked that they're in the right place. The other thing I want to do when I go and sew this is make sure I am sewing below that stitch line of gathers. If I sew above it, I'm actually going to see that from my good side of my dress or my fabric, which I don't want to do. So I'm pinning this the whole way along. If I was doing the version that's more of a straight cut and has the darts in it, I would actually want to first start by matching up my darts together, so my bodice darts with my skirt darts. And I'm trying to remember, I'm pretty sure, because it's actually two different pattern pieces. It's not those pattern pieces that we've taken our original pattern blocks from, weren't designed to go together. So you might just want to check when you're drafting them that the dart does actually sit in the same place, which just means it's the same distance away from your center front fold or your center back line, and that will make sure that they are in the same place. So if I wasn't doing this on if I didn't have that mannequin to check it on, it would have been absolutely fine for me to you actually start pinning it and moving my gathers around and shrinking it in or expanding it a little bit as I was doing this part. Especially seeing this is just a straight cut piece of fabric. Okay, so now I'm going to go and sew this whole line up, and then we will give it a press, and I will show you the next part after that. So a reminder, when I'm sewing this up, I want to make sure that I am below that line of gathers. Otherwise, we will see them. So hopefully you've already put those gather lines closer to the raw edge of the fabric than is your normal seam allowance. Sorry, my pedal just being funny down there. And that would mean it's, oh, sorry, I just realised I didn't change this off the gather stitch. Put your stitch down to the correct length that you need it, so back to 2 to 2.5. I'm doing mine down at 2, as I've mentioned before, because I'm sewing this in such a small, because this is a mini dress, it can have slightly smaller stitches. Now as I go, I want to make sure that I'll just give it a bit more space so you can really see what's going on. I always sew with the bulk of my fabric out this way on my machine. Let's adjust that a bit. And I also want to just make sure that I am pulling it down properly so that I'm not getting little buckles of gathered fabric coming out this way, because they're not going to sit nicely. They're going to get sort of sewn down as funny little folds. So as I'm going, especially where it's quite gathered, I do want to make sure that I'm sort of pulling them out straight so that they sit in their correct spot without actually pulling it away from where it's attached up here. Hopefully that makes sense. So kind of you have to sort of feel it as you go. That's a better way to explain it. Now, the other thing is to make sure you are, when you're stitching over your darts, that you're not putting added folds into your darts, and that your darts are going in that direction that we've already ironed them. So in the video on darts, I discuss how to iron them, and I talk about how I prefer to have them ironed inwards. So then it gives the impression that the inner part is sitting a little bit over the side part. So I'm just fixing up those gathers before I sew them. Making sure they're nice. Keeping it all straight. Flatten out all my gathers nicely. Make sure it's sitting in the right spot. And when I come to my side seams as well, I also want to be sewing them down flat too. So they should already be opened. So I'm just making sure they're staying nice and flat opened. And of course our back stitch. And now this will be sewn on. So you can see that there. I'm going to press this. Actually, I'm going to show you pressing this one. So come over. I'm not going to pause the video. I'll just carry you over to the iron and I will turn off my machine. We never walk away from our machine and leave it on. All right. Nearly dropped the camera. Alright, so when I press this, hopefully you can see, yep, you can see that there. I'm going to press my, snip off these threads that I'm going. I'll have a lot because of the gathers. I'm going to press the seam allowance from my skirt and my bodice upwards. But you want to make sure you're not pressing added folds. So we don't, from the right side, you can see how that's sort of billowing over there. We don't want to press it downwards like that. We want it to be opened out. So I'm pulling it outwards and pressing it upwards at the same time. So I use a bit of the pressure from my iron to hold it while I sort of pull it upwards. Another thing that we could do here, which would probably be a good idea, is to do a little top stitch. Actually, it's probably more of an understitch, sorry, correction. We could understitch what we're just sewn here. So that would be doing a stitch all the way along there, and that would add a little stitch, a visible stitch along here. So it's your choice if you want one like that. It's just going to make sure that that skirt, that seam allowance does sit up towards the bodice. Two reasons why we want it going upwards, not downwards. The less important reason is that, again, it gives that impression that the bodice is kind of sitting on top, which I think looks a little bit nicer in this situation. I don't always prefer it that way. In this situation I do, but the most important reason is because now what we're going to do with our lining is we are going to fold our lining over And this is going, no, not yet, sorry, once the zip's in, so we won't do it yet. And this is actually going to be one of our last steps. The hem's probably going to be our very last step. We're going to actually be folding that over and top stitching or slip stitching it down. So if you top stitch it down, you have to do a very, very neat one. As I've mentioned before, I'm all in favour of doing whatever I can to do it all on machine. That probably comes from my background of sewing for theatre and things like that, because you're just having to work really, really quickly, but also your work is not getting seen close up. So having a little top stitch is not a bad thing. So you could be top stitching that down, or if you really don't want to see it top stitch from the good side of your fabric and you love having nice quality work and good coutured work, you could slip stitch this down. So that's the other reason why you want your seam allowance going upwards, because if it was going downwards, we're going to see all that raw edge of the fabric, which we don't want. So now I have, and I'll pick up the camera and show you properly. So now we have our little dress pretty much sewn together, and it is ready for its zip to go in, and then we will finish off the back seam at the skirt, because the zip won't go the whole way down there. We will hem it, and we will do that either top stitch or slip stitch, as I mentioned there. And that's actually all for the dress. So we're nearly there, guys. So that's all for this video. Bye.